The following stories are from members of Hanmaum Church in South Korea. They aired on a Korean Christian TV network called C Channel and were dubbed in English.
Hello, I'm Yong-Cheol Shin from the Hanmaum Church in Sinchon. I was the head of the labor union at the taxi company I work for. My dream was for the company and the union to be united to create a harmonious community and a healthy workplace. But no matter how hard I tried, I could not achieve this dream. I discovered that the solution to achieve this dream was the gospel. I like to share my story about how I came to delight in a community that was founded upon this gospel. I was born into a family that loves to drink. Maybe that was why I also loved to drink a lot. Plus, I smoked and had a very stubborn personality. I had such a loud voice that people told me I could not possibly commit a terrible crime. I also couldn't stand unfair treatment. And if I made up my mind to do something, I never doubled back. So I would switch jobs without thinking twice. I did that several times. Then I became a taxi driver. Some people say that it's the worst job you could possibly have. It's hard labor. You have to drive at least 400 kilometers or 250 miles a day to make any kind of substantial earnings. Eventually, I was elected as the chairman of our labor union and carried out my duties there. I was far from perfect, but I strove to learn as much as I could so that I could help establish the best labor-company relations possible. I wanted our workplace to be an example for others, an ideal community, and I worked my hardest to achieve this. But it wasn't easy to break down old habits and strongholds of the employers. Even the employees were tough to persuade. The company did not want new ways, and the laborers were content with the way things were. Once we got into a tiff with the company due to a minor issue about washing our cars. Under the collective agreement, the company had to provide our car washes. But the reality was that the drivers were washing the cars themselves. The company was paying for the car washes, although they said the fee was actually for meals and recreation, and they were mad about it. So I demanded that the company hire people to wash our cars instead of making the overworked drivers do it themselves. But our boss began to yell at me, saying that the labor union was being too nosy about everything, and it escalated from there. We began to exchange curse words. Desks were overturned, and things got violent. In this way, I had a lot of meetings with the employers, and if things couldn't be resolved with words, I resorted to blows. I tried asking the company to respect the labor union's opinions and intentions so that we could cooperate with each other better, but the company wouldn't change their attitude. The company did not like that the labor union was asking for humane treatment of the employees, and it did whatever it could to evade our request. The company even took individual union members aside to blackmail them and induce them to leave the union. It made new employees sign contracts that said they wouldn't join the union, even premature letters of resignation to be submitted in case they did join. New employees would keep this to themselves until something unfair happened to them. Then they'd come and confess to us about it. If the company found out that someone joined the union, they would just process the letter of resignation with the right date on it so that it would look like that person had voluntarily resigned. The labor union fought these injustices. We put a strong foot forward, filing a lawsuit together with the regional labor union branch. We once went all the way to the labor union headquarters with an issue like this one, but our case was ultimately dismissed due to a lack of evidence. There was even a plagiarized document that was discovered at the company after we hired a handwriting expert to analyze it. It cost $500 per word, and yet, for some reason, the headquarters sided with the company. It was very unfair. And at that point, I just wanted to give up on everything. But I decided that it was worth sacrificing myself to change this unfair and unjust company, society, and government if I could. So, even under all these terrible oppressive conditions, I defended our labor union till the end, encouraging my fellow union members to strive to establish a fair workplace and society. In order to make our union stronger, we decided to create a more powerful umbrella organization. The company considered me a thorn in their side, and they even said our union was communist. The company hated the union so much that they changed the age of retirement in the collective agreement and told me to resign. It was beyond ridiculous. I was enraged at the company's shamelessness. It was no longer about the dream of uniting the company and the labor forces anymore. I began to think that this company was an evil that should be wiped out from the face of society. I decided to fight the company all the way, so I immediately asked the regional labor union for help. 3 months later, the court decided in my favor, and I was back to work. There had been arbitrations about compensations for my time off during the resignation, but I refused it. Then when I came back to work, the conflict grew worse. There had always been conflicts and confrontations between the company and the workers, but what really gave me a hard time were the conflicts between fellow workers. It was hard enough to stand together as laborers and co-workers in order to fight the company. But as time went by, the employees couldn't withstand the company enticing or pressuring them, and they would leave the union one by one. There was a fellow union member that said the ones leaving were traitors. Another one told me he'll be by my side forever, as he eagerly criticized the company. And yet, they all ended up falling back because they gave in when the company coaxed them to, and my heart broke each time. I tried to convince people not to leave the union. I met and pleaded with them many times, but they had already given up. I felt hopeless in the face of all these members who were turning their backs due to their personal gain. But still, I would collect myself again, remembering past union members who had kept up the good fight as I sang this song. We vow to devote our lives to the cause. Though we may sacrifice our love, our pride, and our names, our friends are gone. The flag is all there is left. Even so, let us stand firm till a new day comes. I would sing folk songs like these to try to ease the pain in my heart, but unlike how it was initially, the path of labor reform was a struggle with loneliness. Whenever I felt lonely and frustrated, I would go to church and pray to God, and I would be comforted. But my faith wasn't very deep, so I would only pray to receive some temporary comfort, and that was all. The truth was that I wasn't all that sure of God's existence. Jesus was also someone I just believed as some religious ideal. So my prayer was just a solitary cry into an empty space. I was all the more confused because I was told that there was only one God, and yet Jesus, a man, was also called God. Still, I wanted to tell my frustration to an absolute being of some sort. In order to find a solution for my despair and weak faith, I tried going to prayer houses and revivals, but I couldn't find something that completely satisfied me. I was wandering and confused, and one day I found out about Hanmaum Church through a friend. When I saw the pastor for the first time, I thought he was quite different. When he was proclaiming the message, there was passion, great assurance, and power. This made me trust him deep inside my heart. On that day, he was lecturing about who Jesus was, but because of his particular accent, I couldn't really catch what he was saying all the way. Still, his voice was filled with assurance, and that really struck me. Till that point, I had always been curious about why Jesus, a human being, was supposed to be God. Then my ears perked up when the pastor said that there was a sure proof that Jesus was God. He said that the sure proof was his resurrection. The resurrection was when a dead person rose back to life. There were prophecies in the Bible that said that God would come to this earth as a human being. Jesus was the one who had come to this world, just like the prophecies said, and he said he would prove that he was the God prophesied in the Old Testament by his resurrection. And he had fulfilled those prophecies for real. There had been many historical witnesses to his death, resurrection, and ascension. And through his resurrection, it said God had given proof to everyone. Also, It said that the disciples believed in the scripture and the words Jesus had said after he had been raised from the dead. The many witnesses who had seen him raised were not afraid at all, even in the face of terrible death, and they have been martyred sharing the news of his resurrection till the end. When I saw that, I was able to clearly believe that Jesus was God, as well as the whole Bible, which I couldn't believe before. Then all my frustrations and despair completely went away at once, and I couldn't be more joyful. However, at this time, the labor union was negotiating about wages and the collective agreement contract. It held a traditional ritual where we worshipped a pig's head, and the chairman was supposed to bow before the offering table first. Rather than fearing God, I was more afraid of what my union members might think, so I ended up bowing before the offering table. Right after I did it, I regretted it immediately, but it was too late. I felt like I had sinned greatly before God, and I was very alarmed. Jesus' disciple Peter had denied Jesus before a blade that could kill him. But I had denied God before what was nothing more than a dead animal's head. What an evil heart I had. I was filled with grief inside. As a chairman who believed in God, I could have just done away with this meaningless ritual. Instead, not only had I allowed it, watched it happen, and bowed before this severed head of a pig, but I had stuck dollars inside its nostril. I felt so convicted before God that I didn't know what to do. That was when I was reminded of what the pastor had said during worship service. There is a huge difference between knowing about the resurrection and believing in it. Then he said, "Who is your Lord?" Faith is believing in the risen Christ as the Lord in your heart. I was reminded of when he said that we must never let go of the Lord till the end of the age. And I realized that my faith up to this point had not been real faith. It had been knowledge and nothing more. I stepped outside the company building and stared up into the sky as I swallowed my tears. Jesus had come to this earth because of my sins, bled on the cross as he died, and risen again to become the Lord of both the dead and the living, so that he can find me, but I had not received him into my heart as my Lord completely. I had not worshipped the Creator God. Instead, I've been Lord and King, claiming my life as my own, as I sinned in all kinds of ways. And in order to save a sinner like me, God had sent his Son to this earth and had him bleed and die on a cross. But I had rejected even his Son. I had not believed in him. This sin, God wanted me to repent the sin and believe in the gospel. But I was still living as the Lord of myself. All this time, I said I believed in the risen Christ. But when I look back, I realized that his resurrection had nothing to do with me. I knew about the fact that he had risen, but I had mistaken my knowledge for faith. That was when I finally repented the evil sin of not believing in Jesus and living as the Lord of myself instead, and I accepted the risen Christ, the Lord, into my heart. Amen. Because God had come to this world as a human being and died on a cross for my sins instead of me, I realized that I ought to live and die for him. I also realized that I ought to live for God's work, and what he wanted was saving souls. In this way, the purpose of my life was changed by confirming the resurrection. And I let go of my chairmanship at the labor union, which I had been stubbornly clinging onto. If I hadn't come to know this gospel exactly for what it was, I probably would have carried the burden of that impossible dream I had about a perfect union for years. I would probably still be engaged in a fierce and stubborn battle trying to protect the union. I used to think that the biggest reason why the labor movement failed was because we could not become united as one. That's because I used to believe that a united labor force could withstand and beat any powerful company. However, I couldn't create a united labor force no matter what I tried. There was nothing I could do as I watched my fellow workers leave the union under duress or personal gain. But now I see before my very eyes the loving and faithful community I had been dreaming of all this time. It's a community made one only by the gospel, not a personal gain or mutual interest. I have found the answer I've been searching for all this time. It's a community that can love its enemies, die for fellow brothers and sisters, and lay down its life for the Lord. I am seeing this ideal community realized, and I am living in it. One sister in the church said something amazing, and it's not just a concept. I'm seeing that it's a reality in this community. She said, "We are members of one body. Your illness is my illness. Your fate is my fate. And I share in your pain and sufferings too." What I experience is that no institution can change the nature of men. A person changes when the Lord of his heart changes through the gospel. And the ideal community founded upon the gospel can change a society. We can think that schools are good, nightclubs are bad, classical songs are good, and pop songs are bad. But the pastor said that anywhere without Jesus is darkness. I've realized that without Jesus, no ideal community or anything else can be achieved in a workplace. I'm 64 this year. Normally at this age, you're enjoying the hobbies you didn't have time for before, or you're wrapping up your affairs as you look back on the life you've lived. As for me, I drive the bus every morning to take our church members to morning prayer service. After 2 hours of service and prayer, it's 7 a.m. I do morning exercises with my church members. And we enjoy breakfast together at church. Then I go to work. I had even gone to a Christian high school, but before I confirmed the resurrection, I could never share the gospel. But now, I confidently share the gospel with people I see, because I've confirmed the resurrection. I work as a bus driver at a university in Chuncheon. I hand out pretty postcards that our church made to the students who are on their way to school as I share about Jesus' resurrection with them. Some of the students tell me that the postcard design is very beautiful and modern. They've even sent me text messages to tell me that. I feel the happiest when I receive messages like these. Also, because the risen Jesus lives in me as my Lord, there's nothing in this world that I'm envious about, and I've always felt joy when I gaze above as I shout, "If I die, I go to heaven." I am destined to live a wonderful life on this earth, together with my eternal family. That's because Jesus lives in me as my Lord. I'll continue to delight in a heavenly life on this earth, together with my church community of the gospel, living for the mission that my Lord has given to me. Thank you.
If you'd like to see more stories about how the gospel changed lives, visit us at facebook.com/HMUOnlyJesus or Google us at HMUOnlyJesus.